Thank you. Welcome to the Community Vision stage. Thank you to our sponsors who are up here and around on signs. They made this all possible. Mackenzie Stagg is here from Rural Studio. I won't say any more because her biography is available to you, except that I love Rural Studio, and you've been inspiring me to think about housing for a long time. Probably not my whole life, because I'm a lot older than you. So without further ado.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming out today. I'm here representing Auburn University Rural Studio. We're going to talk about a number of things. We're going to switch modes a little bit. We're going to talk about small houses instead of tiny houses, but I think there's a fair amount of overlap in the things we're trying to accomplish. So Rural Studio is a design-build program of Auburn University. It's through Auburn University's architecture program. We have about 45 students a year, and we have built about 25 years old, and over that time we've built about 175 constructed projects and educated about 900 alums. So our founders, DK Ruth and Samuel Wackby, they had kind of three ideas for Rural Studio. First was that you learn to do things by actually doing them. Second is if you don't know how to do something, it's easier to do it together, figure it out together. And third, we're training architects, but it's not just enough to be a professional, you also need to be a citizen. And that's what we try to do in our community. So we are based in New Bern, Alabama, population 186. We're a fiercely place-based program. We work within about a 25-mile radius of New Bern, mainly in the counties of Hale, Perry, and Marengo. And those counties are located in the heart of the Black Belt, which is a swath of Alabama, Mississippi that was once named for its really fertile agricultural soil. It's an area of really rich and complicated history from cotton farming to the civil rights movement. The architecture of the place back in its day was pretty reflective of the climate, no matter what the form or function of the building was, from kind of antebellum homes to the agricultural buildings of the area. But in recent times, it has largely been replaced by placeless structures. I don't know if you guys can see this as a kind of a mobile home from the 70s. And a large reason for that is that Hale County and a lot of this region of the state is located in areas of persistent poverty, which is defined as basically an area that's been it had a certain level of people under the poverty line for over 30 years. So when Rural Studio first got started, we worked a lot in areas where I also don't know if you can see this, but you had buildings that were kind of remnants of tenement farming and were substandard housing, but they were grouped in kind of familial networks. And so when we started building houses, this is the Hay Bale House, one of our first constructed projects built out of hay bale walls. And it's not necessarily an affordable house, but it's a recognition that decent housing isn't affordable, but people deserve it anyway. And a lot of our earlier projects are characterized by, they were kind of labeled sustainable because they removed materials from the waste stream and gave them value by turning them into housing. So we had used hay bales. This is the carpet bale house, or carpet house, and I don't know if you can see the final product here, but it's stacking of carpet tiles as wall materials. This Christine's house here is hybrid adobe, kind of red clay, newspaper, and a little bit of cement to make the walls. And so they're affordable for us to build because we're a design build program and we have students that are doing the design and the construction of the houses, but not necessarily affordable from a mass production standpoint. We also started doing community structures as a kind of a recognition that it's not just about the house, but we're trying to make sustainable communities that can support the livelihoods of the individuals who live there. So we did a fire station, which we'll kind of circle back into as well. And just to note, everything you're seeing here is built by undergraduate students, ages approximately 19 to 23. This project right here is for students, as are most of our projects. After we built the fire station, we also built a town hall in New Bern, and they're kind of connected together by a barbecue pit. We also do another kind of sustainability we do is the reusing and remaking of buildings. So we took an old bank building, we expanded it, and that became the New Bern Library. It's also the only building in town with high-speed internet. Here's the interior. We've done we've done a couple of boys and girls clubs. A lot of our population works out of town and then commutes back in, so after school care is vitally important to this area. And also we're focused on health and fitness, so we've done a number of structures in parks. Lions Park is a good example. It's a 40-acre park, sorry, and it has kind of baseball fields, it has a playground, it has a walking trail, and it also has a skate park here that we use. So we're focused on the health aspect for our community, and we're also focused on food. Even though it's a largely agricultural area, it's pretty hard to find fresh food. So on our own campus, we've built a solar greenhouse and are trying to produce food that we can eat ourselves with our students. And then we've also done things like these movable structures that are the Greensboro Farmers Market, so local farmers can come actually sell directly to the local community. And I know I'm up here supposed to be talking about housing, and the reason I'm trying to show you these things, or I'm showing you these things, is because in some ways it all ties back together. So I think the clearest example of that is the fire station. It's a volunteer fire station. Before we built it, it was very hard for people in the area to get homeowners insurance because there's no fire protection. If you can't get homeowners insurance, then you can't get financing, meaning you can't build a home. I mean, you can get a mobile home, which you're probably going to then need to put on a piece of property that is owned by someone else and you're renting it. So it's not necessarily leading to home ownership. So even though these are community structures, everything ties together back into housing. So about 13 years ago now, we began to develop what we call the 20K house, which I will just go ahead and say is actually not $20,000, and we'll talk to you about why it's not $20,000. We had this kind of a naive idea when we started, and the way we got that number is we were looking at what someone on median Social Security could afford and looking at monthly costs and working backwards. That's how we got to the $20,000 number, which is, even though we're kind of learning how complex the system is, we still think it's a good kind of aspiration and speaks to what we're trying to accomplish with the house. So yet again, kind of naively, when we first started looking, we were looking at the house, we thought about the mobile home and thought of it as our competition, which is actually, if you look at the persistently impoverished counties in the United States and look at just replacing the substandard housing in those counties, it's a $1 trillion problem. So mobile homes are one solution to that problem. The 20K house is one solution to that problem. We need everything. We need every system will help solve to solve the housing crisis. So, but yet again, at the beginning, we thought of this as our competition, and it's really tough competition because it has low upfront costs, has a very fast turnaround time. You can see what you can pay for. It's also low risk to a lender because you can take it away just as easily as you can bring it in, and so it's a solid investment. So these are the barriers or the hurdles that we have to providing real homes titled as real property. So what we've begun to look at now is our clients really care about the monthly cost. And that's what that's what's keeping them in their house month to month. So they're looking at living expenses, they've got a mortgage, they've got utilities, and they've got insurance. What we have found is if you could take $1, if you could reduce the utility cost by $1 a month and put that back into the mortgage, so the homeowner is paying the same amount, you add about $200 in construction materials. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but say you can reduce the utility cost by $25 a month. That buys you $5,000 in construction for the same monthly cost for the homeowner. These are the things that we're trying to look at now, the total cost of the home. The first cost of the home is important, but so is the second cost, the cost for the homeowner per month. So also embedded in this idea of the 20K house is that you are doing workforce development. So when we were looking at the number, we were looking at dividing between labor and materials and how quickly you could assemble the house. So we've looked at a lot of things, and I'm going to walk you through the designs that we've been looking at originally or throughout the process, but we've kind of settled on something that can be built in a more conventional stick-framed way with advanced framing techniques, so it can be built quickly. And if you can build it quickly, you can build enough for a year to sustain a a job for a contractor and 3 laborers. So the first 3 houses were really looking at what you could build for $20,000. So we started, the original house is Elizabeth's house, 2-bedroom model. In the south, we have a lot of, we have a lot of moisture, we have termites, and so a lot of these houses were built up on piers. So they do have a permanent concrete foundation, but it allows us to get out of the ground quickly, get away from the moisture, get away from the bugs, and then we build up from there. So Elizabeth's was the very first house looked at just basically how much you could afford for $20,000. Frank's house started to look at how few partitions you could have inside the house as a way to reduce costs, and the 32K truss house looked at a different structural system using a truss instead of a stud on the stud framed wall on the exterior. The next 4 houses looked at a smaller footprint so that you could have more cost per square foot of the house. So you could use slightly fancier materials by reducing the footprint into a smaller house. So I'm just going to flip through these quickly, but we looked at 2 bedrooms, we looked at metal studs, yet again another version of truss house, and this one, which was actually my project when I was a student at the studio, used small diameter timbers as a structure and then had a curtain wall on top of it to enclose it. After doing all those first 7 houses, we sat down and looked again at what we were trying to accomplish, and this is really where we started thinking, if we can look at the total cost, let's think from that direction. What can we provide? How can we make the houses more efficient? So we also decided that, I think when we started, we thought there would be one house and that would be it. We'd find one perfect house and we'd be done. And 13 years on, I can tell you that's not a thing. And people like to live in their houses differently. So we began to think of this idea of a product line of homes where people could choose by what they, their living preferences. So Dave's house is modeled on kind of a shotgun house. It has a more open living room and kitchen, and then a bedroom and a bathroom in the back. Mac's house has an inset porch that divides the house into kind of more distinct rooms, so you have more of a distinct living room. Your kitchen is behind the porch, and then you have a bedroom and a bathroom on the far side. Joanne's house took a square because a square is other than the circle, you can get the greatest area to perimeter ratio. So by setting the porch in, you enter basically in the center of the house, and so you don't really have a lot of circulation around the house. Turner's house, I think I'm going to speed up because I'm running out of time. Turner's house and Eddie's house that followed, we began to look at adding accessibility into the product line, and with accessibility, with people with limited mobility living in a rural area, we also began to examine things like the installation of a tornado-safe room so that our clients who had mobility limitations could stay safe in their homes. So there's Turner's and Eddie's. And then we've moved into 2 bedrooms as a way to accommodate more diverse family situations. So I'm just going to kind of speed through these, as you can see. And then lately, the other thing that we've been looking at is the idea of income generation and a way to kind of change the pro forma of your house by having a main house and then having a smaller unit that you could either use to rent out or for an in-home business. So I'm going to skip past all this because we'll talk about it. Basically, we have some ideas above kind of a decent house, what makes a good house. So what are we working on now? Why are we still working on the 20K house? So the mode that Rural Studio works in right now is that we do research, and then we use that research to deliver a house that we give to a community member in need. And what we would like to do is take that research and take that where we can package it into housing products that can be delivered to the general public. And so we were basically doing all this research and trying to figure these things out more or less so we can give it away. And one of the things that we're working on now is the design communication. So you guys are familiar with construction documents. We did a test partnership with Serenbe Art Farm in Georgia. And one of the things we found is even though these look like 20K houses, they're not actually built exactly like 20K houses, and they don't perform like 20K houses. And so our lesson from that was that we didn't need really a construction set, we needed more of an instruction set that was not only telling you what it looked like, but how to build it and why you build it that way. So, like everyone's familiar with IKEA, it comes with a set of instructions and a funny little tool, and basically any of us can assemble a fairly complex piece of furniture. So in the same way with the 20K houses, we know every stick, every brick, every screw, every nail in this house, and so we can tell you about the general construction process, but we can also start walking you through each step of the process and giving you more instructions on how to build. And what we're also doing is we're developing test and learn partners where we're partnering with other entities, either not-for-profits, charity clients, and also some for-profit clients to see how they deliver the house. So we've got one project going right now where we're taking the house, we're working with Habitat for Humanity, we're taking one of the designs and we're changing it where it also meets Passive House and Fortified Gold standards. And based on the energy savings of the house, if we can add those features for under $18,000, we still get the same. You can add $18,000 to your mortgage and still be paying the same monthly cost. So this is what we're talking about for the life cycle costs of the building. So, Passive House and Fortified, they're kind of funny to look at at once because Passive House wants to completely separate everything from its physical environment, whereas Fortified is trying to tie everything together. But as a research institution, these are the things that we can look at. We've got a whole protocol that we're working on for how we test the houses and make sure that they're up to snuff on performance. And then lastly, these are kind of the 22 models that we've built so far. So thank you very much.
All right, so what does the $20,000 or other level not include as far as costs? So site, septic, power, site consideration.
That's a great question. So the house itself right now is the house and the HVAC system. It is not the land and it is not septic because those costs vary wildly per site. For our charity clients at Rural Studio, the area is kind of categorized as what's called land rich and cash poor. So a lot of people own the land. And we're building these houses in what we call a replacement model, where basically someone has a substandard house. We build very near that house so we can utilize all of the existing systems and infrastructure. And then after the client moves into the new house, we take down the old house.
One of the questions says, what about ongoing upkeep? And you kind of talked about this, but I think it's sort of worth talking about maybe not only the kind of cost to operate in terms of debt and the pro forma, but perhaps our materials or any other aspects.
Yeah, so that's been a big consideration, and the length of the house will last varies wildly depending on how much it's maintained. And so one of the considerations for using conventional stick framing is that local members of the community should know how to repair it. We have found that when we tried to use kind of more complex systems, whenever they had problems, they got replaced with a conventional system because nobody locally would know how to repair that system. So that's a big consideration. That's also, I think why we're sticking with stick framing. And that's not to say we get asked a lot about if we would ever consider doing the house in a modular way. And as I said before, I think, every solution is needed. I think for us, it's about keeping the dollars locally because in a rural community, the few dollars that are there, it's really important that they stay there. And so we're trying to build the house in such a way that it could be easily repaired by local labor.
I'm going to ask a clarifying question. Someone asked, how much does a house cost now? Do you mean sort of the normal benchmark? Whose question was this? Okay, so it's no longer 20,000, so what's the...
So this is why we're trying to understand life cycle costs more, because I can tell you if you go out and give these plans now to 3 people, you'll get 3 very different prices. So Dave's house was version 8, and we first built Dave's house in 2009, and our students spent about $12,500 in materials, and of course their labor was free. If you build Dave's house today, its materials cost $23,000 simply because the material costs have increased. So that's one of the things that we're still working through and what we want to do with our test and learn partners, because this is one of the downfalls of site-built versus modular housing. We don't have a good control on the price because it varies for where you build it and when you build it.
All right, two related questions, I think. Are these units really for southern climates, and/or are there test build sites for uptake in New England?
So these houses are designed for southern climates. We're in a mixed humid climate. People don't actually expect this, and I am still surprised by this. We actually still have more dangerous cold days than dangerous heat days, meaning heating is still very important in our southern climate, but our wall assembly is going to be different than a wall assembly here. You know, where we put our vapor barriers, where we put our air barriers, all that changes in the climate. I think that one of the things that we're interested in doing is we're trying to make the procurement system, and the house is part of that procurement system, but we're trying to understand products for financing, insurance products, you know, the construction of the house itself and the whole system. And we think that the system is very applicable across the US, and we'll need to develop models that meet the kind of the climate and the kind of socio-cultural character of a specific area. So we hope to add houses for different climates at kind of further times after we've been able to test them in our own climate.
All right, last question, conveniently, is a chance for a plug. It was more information, online, books, what's available, sort of how can people dig in more to what you guys have done and what's inspiring you?
Well, since I am going to put in my plug, the other thing that I failed to mention during my presentation is that Auburn University pays for the operations cost of Rural Studio, but everything that you've seen built is paid for with philanthropy. So if you're inspired by the project, please feel free to donate. Our website is ruralstudio.org. And we also there are 3 books about Rural Studio that are available. You can get them on Amazon or hopefully at your local bookseller. They're all Princeton Architectural Press books. Our most recent one was released for our 20th anniversary, which was about almost 5 years ago now.
Yell it loud enough.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. So what's been the response to people who have moved into these homes?
So what's the response of people moving into the
Our
home?
homeowners, our homeowners, you know, our homeowners are great. We try to take every year that we do a house. The following year we take all of our new students on a tour, and so our new students always try to say, well, what would you do differently about the house? And our homeowners are like, I'm good, nothing. But you know, it's a funny, you know, we have. Yeah, they're great to work with. They're really understanding of our students' learning, and that we don't always get things right the first time. We try to give a kind of we try to help out if there are problems with our construction. You know, we'll go back and try to fix things, and so hopefully, you know, Rural Studio has been in the same community for 24 years, and if someone doesn't like something that we're doing, we will hear about it and we will know about it. So we try to be a good neighbor.
All right, I'm devastated that that's all the time we have, but it is, and I thank you so much. Super inspiring to see that you guys are still building beautiful things, but also working on economic sustainability and scalability. So thank you. I hope you'll be around if people want to talk to you.
Thanks very much.